The soft hum of the office air conditioning was the only sound at 10:47 p.m. I had forgotten my laptop charger at my desk, and I figured the building would be empty by now. Most of the team cleared out by 6, especially on a Friday. But as I stepped off the elevator onto the 4th floor, I heard voices coming from the conference room. One of them was Emma. My best friend Emma, who I'd known since we both started at Vertex Technologies 3 years ago. The same Emma who'd brought me soup when I had the flu last winter. The Emma who I'd trusted with everything, including the design concept that could change our entire product line. I should have walked away. I should have grabbed my charger and left. But something in her tone made me pause. That overly enthusiastic pitch voice she used when she was trying to impress someone important. I moved closer to the conference room, staying in the shadows of the hallway. Through the glass wall, I could see Emma standing at the head of the table, gesturing at her laptop screen. Sitting across from her were 3 people I recognized immediately: Michael Chen, our CEO, and 2 investors from Sterling Ventures who'd been circling our company for months. And that's why this redesign will revolutionize how users interact with healthcare data, Emma was saying, clicking through slides. My slides, the ones I'd been working on for 6 months. The animation transitions I'd perfected last Tuesday, the color palette I'd tested with focus groups, the user flow diagrams I'd revised 17 times. My heart started pounding, but I stayed quiet, pressed against the wall. Emma, this is impressive, Michael said, leaning forward. How long have you been developing this concept? About 8 months, Emma replied without hesitation. I started preliminary research last spring, did user interviews over the summer, and finalized the design framework this fall. 8 months. She was claiming she'd started this before I did. The documentation on my hard drive, time-stamped and backed up to the cloud, told a very different story. And you're confident this can be implemented by Q2? One of the investors asked. Absolutely. I've already mapped out the technical requirements and spoken with our development team. With the right resources, we could have a beta version in 3 months. I had spoken with the development team. I had created those technical requirement docs. I had spent late nights on video calls with our lead developer, Marcus, working through every detail. The board is going to love this, Michael said. Emma, if we move forward with this design, we're talking about a significant promotion for you, possibly creative director. This could be the flagship feature that makes our Series B funding round. I watched Emma's face light up. That smile I'd seen 1,000 times over coffee, over lunch, over after-work drinks. That smile I'd trusted. I'm ready for that responsibility, she said. This is my baby. I know every pixel, every user journey, every edge case. Something cold settled in my chest. Not anger, not yet. Something calmer, more calculating. I pulled out my phone and opened my recording app. Then I stepped into the hallway's security camera view, made sure the timestamp was visible, and quietly made my way back to the elevator. In the lobby, I smiled at the night security guard, Tom, who'd been working here since before the company moved to this building. Working late, Sarah? He asked. Just forgot something, I said. Hey, Tom, the camera system records everything on the 4th floor, right? Every angle, every hour. Why do you ask? Just curious. Have a good night. I drove home, my hands steady on the wheel. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I opened a bottle of wine, sat at my kitchen table, and started making a list. The next morning, I woke up early and went for a run. The November air was crisp, and my mind was clear. I had a plan. 3 years ago, I'd been working at a small design agency in Portland, making decent money but feeling creatively stifled. When Vertex Technologies offered me a position, I jumped at it. The chance to work in healthcare tech, to design products that could actually help people manage their medical information more effectively. It felt meaningful. Emma had started the same week I did. We were both new, both excited, both a little intimidated by the fast-paced startup culture. We bonded over terrible coffee in the break room and the overwhelming feeling that everyone else seemed to know what they were doing while we were just figuring it out. She became more than a coworker. She was my friend. When my mom got sick and I had to fly back to Ohio for 2 weeks, Emma covered for me, told Michael I was working remotely, made sure my projects stayed on track. When her boyfriend cheated on her, I was the one she called at 2 a.m., crying. I drove to her apartment with ice cream and tissues and stayed until sunrise. We celebrated promotions together. We complained about deadlines together. We dreamed about what we'd do if the company went public and our stock options were actually worth something. And now she was stealing the biggest project of my career. I thought back to 3 months ago, when I'd first shown her my initial concepts. We'd been at my apartment, drinking wine, and I'd been so excited to share my breakthrough idea with someone I trusted. "This could be huge," I told her, pulling up the sketches on my iPad. "If we can simplify the way patients access their lab results and medication schedules, we could reduce healthcare miscommunication by like 30%, maybe more." Emma had seemed genuinely interested, asking questions, offering suggestions. I'd thought she was being a good friend, helping me refine my ideas. Now I realized she'd been taking notes. Over the following weeks, I'd shared more details with her. The technical challenges I was working through, the user research findings, the conversations with potential healthcare providers who might implement our system. She'd always been so supportive. "You're so talented, Sarah. This is going to make your career." I pulled up my laptop and started going through my files. Every Figma document was time-stamped. Every version history was logged. Every email I'd sent to Marcus and the other developers was in my sent folder with dates clearly visible. Then I checked something else. Our company used Slack for communication, and I searched for messages between Emma and me over the past 6 months. There they were. Dozens of conversations where I'd shared screenshots, asked for her opinion, walked her through my process. In several messages, I'd explicitly said things like, "I'm working on this concept, and this is my project for the redesign proposal." Emma had never claimed any ownership. She'd just encouraged me, asked questions, gathered information. I took screenshots of everything. Then I organized them into a folder labeled with dates and descriptions. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Emma. "Morning. Coffee before work? I have some exciting news to share." I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I replied, "Sure. Usual place at 9? Perfect. Can't wait to tell you." I bet she couldn't. We met at the coffee shop 2 blocks from the office. Emma was already there, practically bouncing with excitement. She hugged me as soon as I walked in. "Sarah! Oh my God, you're not going to believe what happened." I ordered my usual cappuccino and sat down across from her. "What's going on?" "So, you know how the company has been looking for a new creative director since Jessica left?" "Yeah. Well, I stayed late last night to work on a project, and Michael was still in the office with some investors. They asked me to present something I'd been working on, and Sarah, they loved it. Like really loved it. Michael said if the board approves it, I'm basically guaranteed the creative director position." She was looking at me with such genuine excitement, expecting me to be happy for her. "That's amazing," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "What project were you presenting?" "It's this healthcare data visualization redesign I've been developing. It completely reimagines how users interact with their medical information. I've been working on it for months." "Months," I repeated. "Yeah, I know I should have mentioned it to you, but I wanted to keep it under wraps until it was ready. You know how competitive things can get around here." I took a sip of my coffee. It was too hot, but I welcomed the burn. "Can I see it?" I asked. "Oh, I left my laptop at home. But once it's officially approved, you'll see it. You're going to love it, Sarah. It's probably the best work I've ever done." The best work she'd ever done. My work. "I'm so happy for you," I said. And I watched her face light up even more. We chatted for another 20 minutes. She talked about what she'd do as creative director, how she'd reorganize the design team, the salary increase she'd negotiate. I nodded and smiled and asked questions like a good friend would. When we walked into the office together, I felt completely calm, clear-headed, ready. At my desk, I opened my email and started a new message. The recipient line stayed empty for now. I just wanted to draft it perfectly. Subject: Design concept theft, documentation attached. Then I began writing out a timeline, supported by timestamps and evidence, every conversation, every file, every piece of proof that this project had been mine from the beginning. Around 11 a.m., I got a calendar invitation. Monday morning, 10 a.m., Design Proposal Review Meeting, Emma's Healthcare Redesign. Attendees included Michael, the entire design team, the investors from Sterling Ventures, and our head of product development. They were going to make it official. I accepted the invitation. The weekend passed slowly. I refined my documentation, making sure every detail was perfect. I practiced what I would say, how I would present the evidence. I thought about confronting Emma privately, giving her a chance to come clean. But then I remembered her face at the coffee shop. That genuine excitement. The way she'd talked about her project. The complete absence of guilt or hesitation. She'd had months to tell me the truth, months to admit what she was doing. Instead, she'd smiled and encouraged me and gathered every detail she needed to steal my work completely. No, she didn't deserve a private conversation. She deserved exactly what was coming. Monday morning, I dressed carefully, professional but confident. I got to the office early and made sure all my files were loaded on my laptop, backed up on a USB drive, and uploaded to a secure folder. At 9:45, I walked into the conference room. Emma was already there, looking polished and prepared. She gave me a big smile. "Sarah, I'm so glad you're here. Your feedback is going to be really valuable." "I wouldn't miss this," I said. The room filled up. Michael, the investors, our design team, Marcus from development, and Linda from HR, who I'd quietly reached out to on Friday afternoon. At exactly 10 a.m., Michael called the meeting to order. "Thanks everyone for being here. As you know, we're reviewing Emma's proposal for our healthcare platform redesign. This could be a game changer for us. Emma, the floor is yours." Emma stood up, connected her laptop to the projector, and launched into her presentation. I had to admit, she'd rehearsed well. She spoke confidently about user research, design principles, technical feasibility. She walked through the mock-ups, explaining each decision, each feature, each innovation. It was painful watching her present my work, every slide, every word, every idea that I'd labored over being delivered by someone else. But I waited, patient, calm. When she finished, there was a moment of silence, then enthusiastic applause. "Emma, this is exceptional," Michael said. "I think we're all impressed. Does anyone have questions?" I raised my hand. "Yes, Sarah?" Michael said. I stood up, and I made sure my voice was steady. "I have a question. Emma, you mentioned you started developing this concept last spring. Can you tell us specifically when you began the initial research?" Emma's smile didn't waver. "I think it was April, maybe early May. And the user interviews you conducted over the summer. How many people did you interview?" "About 30, across different demographics." "Interesting. And when you said you spoke with Marcus about technical requirements, when was that conversation?" Emma glanced at Marcus, who was looking increasingly uncomfortable. "A few weeks ago, I think." "Actually," Marcus interjected, "Sarah, you and I had those conversations, starting back in July." The room went very quiet. Emma's face went pale. Marcus must be confused. "I definitely spoke with him about—" "I'm not confused," Marcus said firmly. "Sarah has been the lead on this project since June. We've had weekly calls about the technical implementation." I pulled out my laptop and connected it to the projector, replacing Emma's screen. "I think there might be some confusion here. Let me show you something." I pulled up my Figma files, complete with timestamps. The entire room could see the version history, showing my work dating back to May 15th. "This is the original concept sketch," I said, pulling up the first version. "Created May 15th at 11:32 p.m. Here's version 2 from May 23rd. Version 15 from August 3rd. The current version, completed October 28th. Emma was standing frozen by her chair. "Sarah, I don't understand why you have—" "Here are the user interview notes," I continued, pulling up another document. "Conducted between June 10th and August 22nd. 32 participants, actually, not 30. The detailed findings are all documented here, with my name on every file." I looked at Michael. "Here are my email chains with Marcus, discussing technical requirements. The earliest one is from July 9th. Then I pulled up the Slack messages. And here are conversations between Emma and me, where I shared this project with her, asked for her feedback, and explicitly identified it as my work." The investors were leaning forward, their faces serious. Linda from HR was taking notes. Emma tried one last time. Sarah and I collaborated on this. It was a joint effort. She's trying to take credit. There's no record of your contribution, I said quietly. No files with your name. No timestamps showing your work. No emails from you discussing the project with anyone until Friday night, when you presented my work as yours to Michael and the investors. I turned to Michael. I have security footage from Friday night as well, if you need it. The building cameras show me leaving at 7:30 p.m. Emma stayed late, and at 10:47 p.m., I returned because I'd forgotten my charger. That's when I heard her presenting this project as her own work. Michael's face had gone from confused to understanding to furious in about 30 seconds. "Emma," he said, his voice cold. "Is this true?" Emma looked around the room, desperate for an ally. But everyone was staring at her with varying degrees of shock and disappointment. "E-profession. I helped Sarah with some of the concepts," she stammered. "I gave her ideas. I thought we were working on it together." I pulled up the final piece of evidence. The original sketches, clearly labeled with my notes, my thought process, my problem solving. These notes are all in my voice, my handwriting, my methodology. "Emma, you never even mentioned being interested in healthcare design until I shared this project with you." The silence in the room was devastating. Linda spoke up. "Emma, I think we need to have a conversation in my office." Now, Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Michael, Go with Linda," Michael said, his voice tight. "We'll discuss this further." Emma gathered her things with shaking hands and left the room. I could feel everyone's eyes on me as I disconnected my laptop. Michael ran a hand through his hair. "Sarah, I don't even know what to say. I'm so sorry. If I had known—" "You didn't know," I said. "That's why I documented everything." One of the investors spoke up. "Sarah, your work is genuinely impressive. The level of detail, the user-centered approach, the technical feasibility, this is exactly what we've been hoping to see from Vertex." "Thank you," I said. Michael looked at me. "We still want to move forward with this project, with you leading it. And we need to talk about your role in this company, because clearly we've been undervaluing your contributions." The meeting continued, but this time with me presenting my work properly. We discussed implementation timelines, resource allocation, the next steps for development. The energy in the room had shifted from celebration of Emma to excitement about the actual project. When the meeting finally ended 2 hours later, I felt exhausted but vindicated. Marcus caught up with me in the hallway. "Sarah, I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner. I thought you and Emma were collaborating, but I should have realized." "It's okay," I told him. She was convincing. That's what made it work. Over the next week, the full story came out. Emma had been struggling with her own projects, falling behind on deadlines, and she'd seen my work as an easy way to get ahead. She'd carefully documented everything I shared with her, planning to present it as her own when the time was right. The Friday night presentation wasn't spontaneous. She'd deliberately scheduled it, knowing I usually left early on Fridays. She'd spent weeks preparing to pitch it perfectly. HR conducted a full investigation. They found other instances of Emma taking credit for other people's minor contributions, though nothing as blatant as this. She was terminated for cause, with no severance, no recommendations, and a black mark on her record. I felt bad for about an hour. Then I remembered her face at the coffee shop, talking about the best work she'd ever done. 2 weeks later, Michael called me into his office. He offered me the creative director position. More than that, he offered me equity in the company, a seat at the table for strategic decisions, and resources to build out my team. "We should have seen your value sooner," he told me. "But we see it now." The project launched in March, ahead of schedule. The response from healthcare providers and patients was overwhelmingly positive. Our Series B funding round closed at twice the valuation we'd hoped for. The investors specifically cited my design as a key factor in their decision. I hired a new team, including a talented designer named Rachel, who reminded me a bit of myself 3 years ago. Hungry, talented, and needing someone to believe in her. But I also learned to protect my work, to document everything, to be careful about who I trusted with my ideas. One Saturday afternoon, about 4 months after everything happened, I ran into Emma at a grocery store. She looked tired, and she quickly turned away, trying to avoid me. Emma, I said. She stopped, reluctantly turned around. Sarah, hi. How are you? I'm managing, working freelance. It's been hard to find a full-time position after, she trailed off. We stood there for an awkward moment. I'm sorry, she finally said. I know that doesn't mean anything now, but I am sorry. I was desperate and stupid, and I ruined everything. I looked at her, and I felt something unexpected. Not anger, not satisfaction, just sadness. You ruined our friendship, I said. That's what hurts the most. If you had just asked me to collaborate, if you'd been honest about struggling, I would have helped you. That's what friends do. Her eyes filled with tears. I know. I knew that then, too. But I thought this would be easier. And now I've lost everything that mattered. We didn't become friends again. We couldn't. But I understood something important that day. The worst betrayals come from people who are drowning and grabbing for anything to save themselves. It doesn't excuse what they do, but it explains it. I walked out of that grocery store and drove home to my new apartment, the one I could afford because of my new salary. I thought about trust and ambition and the price of both. That night, I called my mom. How's the big city creative director? She asked. Good, really good. But Mom, I learned something important recently. What's that, honey? Success is better when you earn it yourself. It's harder, it takes longer, but when you finally get there, you know it's real. You know you deserve it. Sounds like you've been through something, she said gently. Yeah, but I came out the other side. And I had. Stronger, wiser, more careful, but also more confident. Because I'd proven to myself that I could recognize betrayal, document it carefully, handle it professionally, and come out winning. The healthcare redesign is still being used by millions of people. My team has won awards. The company went public last month, and those stock options turned out to be worth quite a lot. Sometimes I think about that Friday night, standing in the hallway, listening to Emma claim my work as hers. How I could have stormed in angry and emotional and been dismissed as dramatic. Instead, I'd smiled, gathered evidence, and waited for the right moment. That's the thing about justice. It doesn't need rage. It needs patience, documentation, and perfect timing. And maybe that's the real story here. Not about betrayal, though that happened. Not about revenge, though some might see it that way. It's about knowing your worth, protecting your work, and having the confidence to stand up and prove what belongs to you. Because at the end of the day, the truth doesn't need to be shouted, it just needs to be shown.